But that was only a beginning. After 8 years in high school, after the last swimming bath had emptied itself, came the corpses in the anatomy school, white hospital wards, the glassy silence of operating theaters, then 3 years in the saddle, wounded soldiers, squalor and degradation, the war, yet another ever-mowing, never-emptying pool. And now he had landed up here again, back in the same school grounds. He ran across the square feeling sick and depressed, clutching the revolver in his pocket, running God knew where or why, presumably to defend that life, that future on whose behalf he had racked his brains over emptying swimming pools and over those damned men, one of whom was always walking from point. And the other walking towards him from point. B. The dark windows were grim and silent, a silence revealed at a glance as utterly lifeless. Strange, that here in the center of the city, amidst all the disintegration, uproar and bustle, this great 4-story ship, which had once launched tens of thousands of young lives onto the open sea, should now be so dead. No one seemed to be in charge of it any longer, there was not a sound, not a movement to be found any longer in its windows or behind the yellow-washed walls dating from the reign of Nicholas I. A virginal layer of snow lay on its roofs, covered the tops of the chestnut trees like white caps, lay evenly like a sheet over the playground, and only a few random tracks showed that someone had recently tramped across it. And most depressing of all, not only did nobody know, but nobody cared what had become of the school. Who was there now to come and study aboard that great ship? And if no one came to school, why not? Where was the janitor? What were those horrible, blunt-muzzled mortars doing there, drawn up under the row of chestnut trees by the railings around the main entrance? Why had the school been turned into an armory? Whose was it now? Who had done this? Why had they done it? Hash. Unlimber. Roared a voice. The mortars swung round and moved slowly forward. 200 men sprang into action, ran about, squatted down or heaved on the enormous cast-iron wheels. There was a confused blur of yellow sheepskin jerkins, gray coats and fur caps, khaki army caps and blue students' caps. By the time Turbin had crossed the vast square, 4 mortars had been drawn up in a row with their muzzles facing him. The brief period of instruction was over and the motley complement of a newly formed mortar troop was standing to attention in 2 ranks. "Troop all present and correct, sir," sang out Myshlayevsky's voice. Studzinski marched up to the ranks, took a pace backwards and shouted, "Left face! Quick march!" With a crunch of snow underfoot, wobbling and unsoldierly, the troop set off. Among the rows of typical students' faces, Turbin noticed several that were similar. Karas appeared at the head of the 3rd troop. Still not knowing quite what he was supposed to do, Turbin fell into step beside them. Karas stepped aside and, marching backwards in front of them, began to shout the cadence. "Left! Left! Hop! 2, 3, 4. The troops wheeled toward the gaping black mouth of the school's basement entrance, and the doorway began to swallow Litem rank by rank. Inside, the school buildings were even gloomier and more funereal than outside. The silent walls and sinister half-light awoke instantly to the echoing crash of marching feet. Noises started up beneath the vaults as though a herd of demons had been awakened. The rustling and squeaking of frightened rats scuttling about in dark corners. The ranks marched on down the endless black underground corridors shored up by brick buttresses, until they reached a vast hall feebly lit by whatever light managed to filter through the narrow, cobwebbed, barred windows. The silence was next shattered by an infernal outbreak of hammering as steel-banded wooden ammunition boxes were opened and their contents taken out, endless machine gun belts and round, cake-like Lewis gun magazines. Out came spindle-legged machine guns with the look of deadly insects. Nuts and bolts clattered, pincers wrenched, a saw whistled in a corner. Cadets sorted through piles of stored damaged fur caps, greatcoats in folds as rigid as iron, leather straps frozen stiff, cartridge pouches and cloth-covered water bottles. "Come on, look lively!" Studzinski's voice rang out. 6 officers in faded gold shoulder straps circled around like clumps of duckweed in a mill race. Myshlayevsky's tenor, now fully restored, bawled out something above the noise. "Doctor!" shouted Studzinski from the darkness, Please take command of the medical orderlies and give them some instruction. Two students materialized in front of Alexei Turbin. One of them, short and excitable, wore a Red Cross brassard on the sleeve of his student's uniform greatcoat. The other was in a gray army coat, his fur cap kept falling over his eyes, so he was constantly pushing it back with his fingers. "There are the boxes of medical supplies," said Torbjörn. "Take out the orderly's satchels, put them over your shoulder and pass me the surgeon's bag with the instruments." "Now go and issue every man with 2 individual field dressing packets and give them brief instructions in how to open them in case of need." Myslявski's head rose above the swarming gray mob. He climbed upon a box, waved a rifle, slammed the bolt open, noisily charged the magazine, then aimed out of a window, rattled the bolt and showered the surrounding cadets with ejected cartridges as he repeated the action several times. After this demonstration, the cellar began to sound like a factory as the cadets, rattling and slamming, filled their rifle magazines with cartridges. "Anyone who can't do it, take care. Cadets," Myslявski sang out, "show the students how it's done."